Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. Thank you for joining us. President Trump met with his Polish counterpart Wednesday. It's the first time a foreign leader has visited the White House since the coronavirus outbreak began. Natalie Brand has the details.
President Trump hosted Polish President Andrzej Duda at the White House, the first world leader to visit since the coronavirus crisis arrived in the U.S.
Our alliance is powerful and a very powerful testament to what free people can achieve together. And I believe that the greatness of our relationship lies ahead.
President Duda and his delegation received coronavirus tests before the visit, which comes as both Poland and the U.S. have lifted restrictions imposed during the pandemic.
This is the first after COVID, after the start of the plague, as I call it.
Like President Trump, President Duda is facing a re-election bid of his own, with Poland's election coming in just days.
I do believe he has an election coming up, and I do believe he'll be very successful.
With the U.S. election 4 months away, President Trump is not letting the coronavirus stop his campaign travel.
We're doing so well after the plague. It's going away.
The president held a campaign rally at a Phoenix church Tuesday, attended by a few thousand young supporters, many of whom did not follow public health recommendations to wear a mask. Once again, President Trump used a racist slur to describe the virus.
Coronavirus, right? Kung flu, yeah.
Earlier, White House counselor Kellyanne Conway defended his use of the term.
The virus originated in China, and had China been more transparent and honest with the United States and the world, we wouldn't have all the death and destruction that, unfortunately, we've suffered.
Presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, who has criticized President Trump for his rhetoric and rallies during the pandemic, continues hosting virtual events. President Trump is scheduled to visit the key battleground state of Wisconsin Thursday, one of more than 24 states where coronavirus cases have been on the rise.
And Natalie Brand joins me now from the White House. Hi there, Natalie. Can you talk a little bit about what President Trump and President Duda spoke about during their meeting Wednesday?
Well, President Trump said they would be talking about economic development, the military and defense cooperation, and that was certainly a focus during the Rose Garden news conference held with the two leaders this afternoon. Even though the coronavirus was mentioned here and there, it was certainly not a focus. As with past visits by President Duda, defense cooperation was the key focus here. Poland has pushed for additional U.S. troops in the country, and that is something that President Duda reiterated today about a need for European security, his concerns about Russian aggression. President Trump this afternoon confirmed that some of the U.S. troops in Germany would be moving to Poland, but also said they're going to have to pay for those troops. But then he did praise Poland for being one of the NATO countries that is meeting the recommended spending target of 2% of GDP. President Trump saying one of the few countries. We know that has been a major focus of President Trump's. Elaine.
Well, Natalie, there has been some criticism against President Trump for inviting President Duda. Why is that?
Well, this trip comes just days, 4 days, in fact, before an election in Poland. So it's seen as a way to boost President Duda's re-election bid. And for that reason, some analysts, former diplomats, and also the House Foreign Affairs Committee chair calls the visit here highly inappropriate, some noting that typically there would be an election blackout in the weeks ahead of the election, so there's not the perception of electioneering or interference. Now, President Duda was asked about this in the Rose Garden and talked about how the coronavirus has delayed plans, and the two leaders are simply acting in their capacity as presidents, and also mentioning trying to finalize some of their agreements, saying that he hopes for a win-win for both countries. Now, again, days before President Duda's an election in Poland, but It also comes just 4 months before the election here in the United States, and President Trump certainly signaling this week that he is eager to return to the usual business of meeting with foreign leaders and also hitting the campaign trail, even though we are still in the midst of this pandemic. Elaine.
So speaking of the election, as you mentioned, President Trump held a campaign rally in Phoenix Tuesday with little social distancing. Arizona is one of more than 20 states that has seen a stark rise in COVID-19 cases, and the mayor of Phoenix said she did not feel comfortable with the event. What has been the Trump campaign's response to holding events despite this ongoing health threat?
Right. Well, the Trump campaign, interestingly enough, did not host that event last night, even though it did take on the feel of a full-blown Trump campaign rally. It was that Students for Trump event that hosted the event and took on the liability risk, or actually, I should say, they made the attendees sign those liability waivers so they would not take on the risk. What we saw inside that rally was a few thousand, mostly younger students packed into a church venue, and our reporter in the room, CBS News' Ben Tracy, notes that hardly anyone, according to his reporting, was wearing masks. The vast majority not wearing masks, not social distancing, even though organizers had encouraged masks to be worn. So we'll have to see what ends up happening in the coming days and weeks in Arizona. Now, interestingly enough, we did get a new statement from the White House communications team with regard to Arizona. A spokesman says the White House followed its COVID mitigation plan to ensure the president did not come into contact with anyone who was symptomatic or had not been tested. Anyone traveling in support of the president this weekend will be closely monitored for symptoms and tested for COVID, and therefore pose little to no risk to the local populations. And that is also in response to news that the president plans to travel to New Jersey this weekend, where, as you know, one of 3 states to impose a new quarantine advisory for visitors, travelers from some of these hotspot areas.
All right, Natalie Brand at the White House for us. Natalie, thank you very much.